Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Nika Luffy got married with all girls part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Milo F Waters for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Pirates were said to be the scourge of the seas. Remorseless killers and plunderers who sought only treasure and power at the cost of innocent lives and their own morality. What many didn't know, however, was that 1 in every 10 crews were actually quite decent. These peace-main pirates cared only for adventure and the thrill of the unknown. Sure, they would rob people and cause trouble, but only if you pissed them off first. And so the red-haired pirates were quite content to simply drink and goof around in the local tavern, much to the delight of their biggest fan. A 7-year-old boy in a white shirt, jeans and a recently made scar under his left eye was clearly ecstatic just being around them. "Hey Shanks," he asked, "can I come with you on your next adventure?" The red-haired captain himself just laughed into his flagon, banging on the bar top. "Ahahaha. Luffy, come on now. You're way too young to be a pirate." "I am not." The boy whined, "I can swim real good, I'm brave, and I can punch really, really hard." "Heh, nice try, pipsqueak." Shanks ruffled the boy's hair for good measure, making him growl in embarrassment. The other pirates laughed along to add salt in the wound. Sure, it was all in good fun, but that didn't save Luffy's pride. The boy was then greeted by a plate of steak thanks to the young lady tending the bar. "Don't feel too bad, Luffy. I think you can be a great pirate." "Wow, thanks Makino." The young boy dug in while Shanks just smiled at him. "Now, Luffy, you don't want to take advantage of her hospitality, do you?" "Of course not. When I'm a pirate, I'll bring back a ton of treasure to pay her back." That brought another round of laughs from Shanks' men, while Luffy mostly ignored them. In the back of his mind, however, he wanted to prove them wrong. Okay, so the knife under the eye thing backfired and was probably gonna get him hell from Gramps later, but he knew he could do it. All he needed was a chance to prove he'd be the greatest pirate ever. Then the boy's eyes turned to the open treasure sitting behind Makino's bar. Inside is a glimmering golden fruit covered in swirls, shining in the sunlight coming in through the side window. Suddenly he barely remembers the plate of meat he just ate, his stomach growling in need. He guessed it belonged to Shanks, but he didn't care. Luffy needed it. "Heh, this'll teach you to laugh at me." He snatches the fruit away once Makino is busy at the tap, sinking his teeth into it. "Wow, this is delicious. It's easily the best fruit he's ever had." He quickly went back for a second bite, then a third, noisily gulping each one down. "Hey, Luffy, you shouldn't eat just because you're upset," Shanks tried to say, but he was ignored. Then the captain noticed the empty box. His smile faded and his eyes widened in panic. "The devil fruit." Luffy loudly swallows the last bite, just in time for Shanks to grab him by the shoulders. "Luffy, did you eat the fruit in that?" "Yeah, it was really yummy." That made the pirate step back. Devil fruits were supposed to taste like utter crap. Shanks wanted to ask more, but then suddenly the kid's eyes rolled back, almost falling off the bar stool. The entire party stopped dead at the sight, Makino yelping in terror as all of the pirates crowded around. No one even noticed when a crowd of bandits entered. For Luffy, he woke up not in the bar, but in a pitch-black void. His head felt sore like his Gramps just gave him a fist of love. "Hello? Shanks. Makino, where am I?" "Oh, sorry about that. I haven't had company in eons, let me get the lights." The whole void suddenly turned white, forcing Luffy to clamp his eyes shut. "Oh www. Too bright. Wahahahaha. Oh gods, that never gets old. When are any of you slowpokes gonna start wearing glasses?" "That's not funny, you jerk. Turn it off." "You didn't say." "Grrrrrrrrr." The taunting ethereal voice did lighten up the light enough so Luffy could actually look around. He finally caught sight of something, a laughing black silhouette moving along the plane of light. "Who the heck are you?" "Oh, nobody really," the shadow said with an impish grin, a set of pearly whites against the black, "just your average deity looking for an excuse to wreck shit, and looky here. I just found it." Luffy looked from side to side, not seeing anyone or anything besides him. His head tilted to the side in confusion. "What is it?" "Ooh oh. Yep. I definitely made the right choice with you. I can just see the world trembling in fear from you, kiddo. Stop making fun of me. Stop making it so fun." The voice taunted back before the shadow itself started to ripple and reveal the actual person. An 8-foot-tall lanky man in billowing white robes with equally stark hair that more resembled fluffy clouds. Luffy might have said he looked silly if not for his face. Not only were his eyes as gold as the fruit he ate, they seemed to almost glow with manic joy. On top of that, he had a smile so wide it showed off his gums that made the boy want to laugh and run away at the same time. "Who are you?" Well, I have many names depending on which spot of the multiverse I'm in. Parroted, Discord, Loki, that one is really damn popular right now, and Alistair are a few, but you, my little badass in the making, can call me Nika. Okay. Luffy's head already hurt. Just standing around this guy was like looking directly into the sun. So, why am I here? That fruit you just ate. You know how devil fruits are supposed to grant power. Yeah, Shanks told me about them. What does mine do? Yours is the winning ticket in the superpower lottery. You've eaten the human fruit model. Nika. That means you get to meet me and become my personal champion. What does that mean? It means you're gonna have everything you've ever wanted and more, kid. And anyone who stops you is gonna end up a splat mark on the pavement. You said you want to be a pirate, right? Yeah. Can you help me be a great pirate? Nope. Why not? Because you aren't gonna be just a great pirate. You're gonna be the best. You're gonna make the Gold Roger look like a deck swabber. You're gonna be the next king of the pirates. Luffy's face lit up like a lighthouse. King of the pirates, really? You can do that? Yes, but it isn't gonna be quick. You're gonna have to do most of the work. This isn't the kind of story where I just snap my fingers and make you an all-powerful god. I mean, if I could do that, do you think I'd be sitting here playing Tiddlywinks with myself for almost 800 years? Playing what now? Don't ask, you'll understand when you're older. The bottom line is you'll be my avatar representation of me. Basically, I act through you on the mortal plane because I'm stuck here. You're not gonna control me, are you? Heck no, where's the fun in that? No, long story short is that I point you in a good direction to go and you take it from there. Think of me as your guardian angel who only occasionally screws with you for my own amusement. Luffy was deep in thought. On the one hand, this guy was weirder than weird and had already mocked him several times. On the other hand, he really wanted to be an awesome pirate. And just being around this guy felt unusual, like he was standing directly under the sun. Something in his gut told the boy that this was all real and that Nika was dead serious despite the massive vulpine smile. Okay, Nick. I'm in. Attaboy, kid. This world's officially gonna be yours now. But first, it's time for you to get back to the plot. The readers are getting pretty sick of exposition. The who? Try and land on your feet. The hole suddenly opened up and Luffy fell through with a scream. He soon landed back first on the bed his body was sleeping in with a shout. Luffy, it's okay. Calm down. The boy opened his eyes and had to adjust to the low lighting of the room. He recognized this place, the back room of Makino's bar, where he occasionally stayed when Gramps trained him to the point of unconsciousness. He turned and saw the lady herself watching over him. As soon as their eyes met, the lady smiled. Oh, phew, you're okay. You had us all really worried there, Luffy. Luffy looked outside, the moon high in the sky. How long have I been here? About 8 hours. Hold on, let me tell the others you're awake. Makino stepped out and soon walked back in with a very familiar pair that made Luffy smile. Shanks. Ben. Hey there, kid, the captain said before sitting down on the edge of the bed, you gave us all a real scare. Luffy, what happened to you? The first mate asked, even pulling the cigarette from his mouth. I've never heard of someone falling unconscious just from eating a devil fruit. You mean that's not normal? Not at all. Usually, a person's power will manifest immediately. The only thing that would make them go under like would be falling in the sea or touching sea stone, but neither of those things were around. Luffy thought to himself. He did hear about how you couldn't swim after eating one of those fruits, but nothing about a weird stone. Trust me, kid, you're not gonna be doing much swimming in your line of work. What the? Luffy? What's wrong? Shanks, you didn't hear him. Hear who? Luffy, there's no one here but me, Ben, and Makino. The startled boy looked around. Sure enough, the pirates and bartender looked at him like he was crazy. Luffy then looked down in embarrassment only to hear that same mocking laugh in his head. Oh man, clichés be damned. The whole what was that? Routine never stops being funny. Bwahahaha. Luffy, are you sure you're okay? Makino asked, kneeling down. You didn't hit your head, did you? No, you didn't. No, I'm fine. The loud gurgle rang through the room. Luffy looked down and suddenly felt his stomach was empty. Oh, I get it now, you're just hungry. Shanks eyed, Makino, would you mind? Not at all. I'll be right back, Luffy. She stepped out and left the youngster alone with the two buccaneers. Shanks then placed a hand on Luffy's shoulder. Hey, Luffy. I didn't mean to make you so upset. Sorry if I hurt your feelings. No, it's okay, Shanks. I guess I am too young to be a pirate. Yeah, but look on the bright side. Starting later means you have to prepare. I wasn't kidding when I said to give yourself 10 years. There's a lot that comes with being a pirate. He's actually right. Little boys tend to get one of two jobs on pirate ships, cabin boy or bait. Yeah, I guess. And with that, Makino walked in with a hearty helping of meat that immediately took Luffy's attention. Shanks just chuckled. "Well, you seem alright to me. I'll be in town for a few more days." "Okay. Bye, Shanks." "Luffy, don't talk with your mouth full." He swallowed and apologized to Makino as she left, leaving the boy alone with his meal. Once he was done eating, Luffy's focus turned back to the voice in his head. "That wasn't funny, you know." "Au contraire, pipsqueak. I personally thought it was hilarious. But yeah, now's a good time to mention that I can telepathically communicate with you and only you." He let out a sigh before turning in for the night, wondering just what would happen now. In the halls of Marineford, Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp was dealing with the most hated menace of all the Navy paperwork. "Darn pencil-pushing kids," he grumbled as he redid the form in front of him for the 4th time. "They better hope their records are as clean as the Peru. He looked at the orange and blue shell transponder snail ringing on his desk, wondering who could be calling him this early in the morning. Figuring he could use the distraction, he picked up the line. "Hello. Hey Gramps, it's me. Luffy." He balked. "How'd you get my number?" "It took a lot of asking around, but I met up with a Marine who gave it. Sorry if I'm bothering you." Garp was puzzled beyond belief. Not only about the call, but the sheer sadness in Luffy's voice. The snail looked half ready to cry whenever it spoke. No, it's no trouble at all." "What's the matter, Luffy?" "But Sabo. He's dead." What happened? Did pirates get him?" Luffy then recounted the burning of Grey Terminal and how Sabo's boat was shot down by the departing world nobles for daring to be in the way. Garp snarled under his breath. Of course, it was one of them. When he spoke, he had to keep his rage under control. This was the one time Luffy didn't need discipline. "Luffy, I'm really sorry to hear that. I know how close you three were. Are you and Ace okay?" "Yeah, we're fine. Dayton's actually been really nice to us. She even brought us food for once. I'll have to thank her next time I'm around. But Gramps, there's something I wanted to ask you." "Yes, what's that?" "When you come back, I want you to train me even harder." "How you mean it?" "Yeah, I am. I want to do something really important with my life." "Well, that's it." "Great, Luffy. I'll look into coming over as soon as I can. You and Ace just stay safe, alright?" "Sure thing. See you soon, Grandpa." The snail clicked off and an elated Garp strode out of his office. It was finally happening. Luffy was interested in joining the Marines. He would head straight for Sengoku's office to look into some extra shore leave. On the way, he also made a note to ask Tsuru for ideas on what to bring the kids to cheer them up. She did have a granddaughter herself. Meanwhile, in the East Blue, Luffy thanks Mayor Whoop Slap for letting him use the transponder snail and heads out of Fuchsia's town office. His older brother lifts his orange hat as Luffy walks out. "So? Did it work?" "Yep." "Wow, I can't believe he fell for it." Ace laughed as they walked out of the village. "Good thinking, little bro." Luffy smiled at the compliment, but he couldn't take the credit. It was all Nika's idea, how to phrase it so Garp would fill in the blanks wrong himself. The god had told him there were far more ways of lying than an outright fib. As they both headed back to the Curly Bandits' hideout, the 8-year-old boy was wrapping his head around it all. How Nika wasn't the only god influencing their world. How the world government was actually run by a dark being called Imu who hid behind the Marines and the 5 Elder Stars to manipulate everything. And how it was Luffy's job as Nika's avatar to destroy Imu and free the world from his control. Before he wondered how the heck he was supposed to do that. He could stretch his body just like Nika could, and he did start thinking of ways to use it, but that was it. His grandpa had been training him up, but Luffy hated it, yelling at the old codger all the while. But not anymore. Not since Nika explained how Imu allowed the world nobles carte blanche to do whatever they wanted. They had been abusing their power, killing and enslaving not even Nika knew how many. Luffy stopped crying for his brother and felt a fire burning in his gut. He clamped a hand on the brim of his beloved straw hat. "Luffy, this hat is my greatest treasure," Shanks told him before leaving the East Blue for good, "and now it's yours. Give it back to me when you become a great pirate, okay?" "I'll do better than that," Luffy swore to himself. "I'll be the best pirate ever. I'll be king of the pirates and then I'm gonna beat up Imu myself. He's not gonna hurt anyone ever again." The 10-year-old Luffy grunted in effort, pushing up again and again, even with the trawler-sized boulder strapped to his back. His face was pouring sweat, his muscles burned, but he wouldn't give up. "Alright Luffy, just 50 more. Garp ordered, "Then we're gonna spar and see how those new gum attacks of yours are coming along." Luffy just grunted. Garp had been running him into the ground harder and harder with each visit. Every time he thought he'd seen the worst of it, the old marine kept raising the bar. Lifting heavier and heavier weights, more and more laps around the island, throwing him against the many predators that stalk the jungles of Dawn Island. But now he never cried, never complained. It was all to get stronger. To achieve his dream. To one day fulfill his role for Nika. The god, when he wasn't toying with Luffy for his own amusement, had actually proven a steadfast partner. He encouraged his avatar, pushing him to train hard even when Garp was away, but he also told Luffy the importance of making and keeping friends. No one person can do it all, Luffy, not even me, he said once, in a very rare moment of sincerity. You need to find not just allies, but comrades. People who will stand by your side no matter what. Be loyal and kind to the right people, and they'll help you to the ends of the world. When Luffy wasn't training, he was palling around with Ace and having more adventures. He was helping Makino at the bar, easily able to lift a keg over his shoulder. He was just being friendly to the people of his village. He did still cause trouble and get an earful from Dayton, but he also helped protect the hideout from any other bandits that came looking for a score. But once Luffy was done with his morning training and eaten by hunting down a tiger, naturally, Garp said he had something special to teach Luffy. Alright, kid, pay attention. What I'm about to teach you is something only taught to captains or higher. This is an ace in the hole that'll put you right at the top of the class. Luffy nodded, noting how serious Garp was. The old marine then reached into his pocket and took out a simple grey blindfold before wrapping it around his own eyes. What are you doing? Did I say you could speak up? Garp threw a punch right at Luffy's stomach, making the young boy wince. You didn't buckle. Not bad. He commended before walking a few paces away. Now then, try to hit me. Okay then, Luffy wound up his punch, stretching his arm back several feet before attacking. Garp leaned just out of the way. Come on, try again. Luffy did try again and again and again, but Garp just kept dodging. He didn't get it. The old man's eyes were completely covered, and yet he barely had to move to dodge it all. How are you doing that? That is observation hockey, Garp answered, revealing his eyes again. I told you this was advanced stuff. Now pay attention to this. Garp reached down and punched the ground, making a perfect indent of his fist in the soil. Luffy wondered what was so special about that, only to see his other hand turning black. Whoa. What's that? The vice admiral slammed the darkened fist right next to the first impact. His arm moved exactly the same speed as before, but this punch plowed straight into the ground, the earth under Luffy quaking. This is armament hockey, the other technique you're gonna learn. Both of these come from your willpower. And as you can see, it'll give you a huge edge. Oh man. Nika gaped. Luffy, get cracking on those. You have no idea the cheat codes this geezer is handing you right now. Luffy liked the sound of that, even if he didn't understand yet. He nodded, and soon Garp was detailing how he needed to concentrate his will either into his mind or his muscles. It didn't make much sense, but Garp assured him that if Luffy kept pushing himself harder and harder, he'd have them down in no time. Luffy and Ace stood apart from each other. The former had a blindfold over his eyes while the latter looked very confused. What the heck had Garp been teaching Luffy? Are you both ready? Yep. Sure. Go. Ace figured it was better not to question it, the young teen rushing to try and hit Luffy. The younger brother didn't even move. That is until Ace's first was inches away and Luffy suddenly ducked. How'd you do that? Hehehe. Ace tried over and over to clobber his brother, but it wasn't any good. Luffy dodged, jumped and swerved around everything. Hey, you're cheating. I'm not. Just to prove a point, Luffy caught Ace's latest kick and then answered with a right hook that left Ace sprawling. Come on, Ace. You're not fighting like you mean it. Are you gonna let a pipsqueak beat you? Alright, that's it. Now Ace was pissed. He pulled out his trusty pipe and made to whack Luffy upside the head. But it didn't help at all. The little tyke started showing off even more, doing flips and using his gum fruit to slingshot himself towards trees to give Ace the slip. Stop that. Okay, if you say so. Luffy whipped the blindfold off and charged right at Ace. The older brother ran up to meet him, prepping to give him a swing that would knock him senseless. Except when Ace brought the metal pole down, it collided with Luffy's arm and it shattered into bits. Okay, what the fuck? Ahahahaha. I did it. Luffy cheered, I know how to use hockey. Attaboy Luffy. Good job. Garp was even clapping and cheer even as Ace stormed up to him. You taught him to do that, why didn't you teach me? Because you aren't gonna be a marine like Luffy is. If you do, however, I might just change my mind. Would you say? Screw that. Ace huffed off, but he and Luffy shared a look. The brothers had to fight not to laugh at how Garp still hadn't caught on. The older kid ran off into the forest to find some lunch while Garp approached Luffy. I've gotta hand it to you, Luffy, that was some fine work. I bet you'll be the youngest captain in history. Thanks Gramps. Now, you're in a pretty good spot already. Dude, I do think you could still use an edge. What kind of edge? Consider this your secret weapon. Garp reached into his cloak and pulled out a black book bound shut with a metal clasp. Wow, what is this? This is something that we only hand to the cipher poles. Luffy, I mean it when I say you can't let anyone else get this book. Namely, because old goat breath would have my head for it. Okay, Gramps. I'll keep this book to myself. You better. If you thought hockey was broken, this should be illegal. I can't believe he's just handing this to you, and I've seen all the shit. At night, Luffy stretched his reading muscles to the limits as he read up on the 6 powers. These moves sounded completely insane, but his face lit up in a smile. Wait until Luffy had an entire crew he could teach these to. Luffy stood tall as Garp glared at him. He knew this was coming, but he still had the tiniest knot in his stomach. That's better than most given that the hero of the Marines was grinding his teeth and curling his infamous fists in anger. So, let me get this straight, he ground out, you aren't going to be a Marine. Nope, Luffy said plainly, unflinching even as Garp's glare heated up. His eyes never wavered underneath his treasured hat. Even though I've taken months out of my schedule to personally train you. Even though I've already enrolled you in the Naval Academy. Don't care. Even though I paid your tuition in full. In cash. I never asked you to do that. Well then I guess you owe me 30 million, you little shit. I can't believe you. I even threw you a birthday party. The cake was yummy, Luffy admitted, but he still wouldn't budge. This was the day. 13 was the age that recruits entered the Marineford Academy. After the fun last night, Garp ordered Luffy to pack his things and say goodbye to everyone in the village at the crack of dawn. When Luffy refused and made it clear he wasn't leaving, he'd been dragged to the same training spot they'd frequented to get beaten into submission. So what is it? What's so damn important that you're gonna throw away years of work for? Luffy lifted his eyes to stare Garp in the face. I'm gonna be king of the pirates. Like hell you are. Garp bellowed so loud the entire island heard him, damn that red-haired Shanks. I can't believe you lied to me, your own family. I never lied to you, Luffy shrugged, I never said I wanted to be a Marine. Garp was about to bowl him over only for the gears in his head to start turning and promptly lock up. He never heard Luffy say that directly. And then his fuse went off again. You still tricked me, damn it. And now you're gonna go to the academy whether you like it or not. No. Oh yeah, says who? Says me. It's my life and I'm gonna be a pirate. Garp stalked forward, his hands ready to punch Luffy into next week, but the straw-hatted teen remained still. He wasn't afraid of Garp anymore. Nika had made it clear there were far more dangerous foes. The admirals. The warlords. The emperors. All of these he'd have to conquer on his mission to defeat Imu. He wouldn't let something like Garp stop him. I suggest you rethink that right now. Luffy did just that, putting his head down for several moments before glaring back up. Nope. Still wanna be a pirate. Smart mouth. Garp threw a punch at him, but Luffy managed to tilt aside. He had been navigating the island with his observation alone. He saw that coming a mile away. Of course, that was far from Garp's best. He truly does care for you, the old Nika sighed, it's a shame he's so stubborn. He probably could have been Roger's best friend under different circumstances. That image brought a smile to Luffy, angering the Vice Admiral even more. Laugh at me, will you? A left hook grazed by Luffy's face, again far too slow to connect. He might be holding back, but I wouldn't put money on you in a straight fight. You need to bargain, play against his pride. How about a deal? What, you say yes right now and I don't knock your head off? No, I'm gonna prove how strong I am. I bet I can knock you down. Garp laughed his head off, barely standing upright. Oh ho ho, that's a good one. Like you could ever pull that off. If I could, would it be really tough? Yeah, so what? If I could pull that off, I'm strong enough to think for myself. And if you can't? Then I'll go with you. Garp stopped dead in his tracks. He couldn't be serious, could he? You mean that? Yep. No backing out. Never. Garp was mulling it over. Luffy could practically feel Nika struggling not to burst into laughter. He had the old man exactly where he needed. All he needed was one last push. What's the matter, Gramps? Scared I might win? The Marine growled. Alright, you know what? Let's try this little wager of yours. I'll give you 5 minutes to knock me down. And when you lose, I'll help you pack your things. Deal? Garp quickly stomped into the ground to create 2 perfect indents of his feet in the dirt. His position was set. Luffy quickly leapt backwards and widened his stance. Alright then, squirt, he said while pulling out a pocket watch, 5 minutes starting now. Luffy snapped his arm back, the rubber limb stretching for 100 feet before stopping. Gum. The arm snapped forward, rocketing forward like a whip with Luffy's knuckles aimed straight at his grandfather's face. Pistol. The blow rang true and slammed into Garp's nose. The Marine only barely flinched. Heh, is that all you got? No way. Luffy stretched arms back now, pushing their length even further. Gum, bazooka. His palm slammed into Garp's stomach, getting the tiniest oomph. In response, Luffy growled. He barely felt that. 30 seconds gone already, Garp warned, you better try a lot harder than that. DRR, shave. Luffy seemed to disappear where he stood, much to Garp's approval. Well, at least he made good use of that book. Gum bullet. The young pirate appeared right beside Garp and launched a fist directly into his side, only just barely dodging the swing to counter him. Pretty fast. Thanks, Luffy growled before hopping into the air and then again off of thin air. God moonwalked down too, and Garp looked down. 4 minutes left. Luffy kicked one of his legs up and elongated the limb for hundreds of feet. Battle axe. The massive stomp crashed down on Garp's shoulder, actually making him wince this time. He looked over and saw why. Luffy's foot was coated in black armament hockey. HMMPH, starting to get somewhere. Okay, that made him flinch. But you're not going to knock him over by striking from above. Right? Luffy nodded, tumbling back down to the ground. He turned to face Garp again, grateful that he only struck back once. He needed to overwhelm the old man with so much that he couldn't keep up. It was time to break out his favorite technique. He spread his feet apart, his arms at his side. He took a long, deep breath in between his nose. Garp could feel it, Luffy's focus. He knew this was going to be the big one. Battling. Luffy's fists suddenly blurred through the air, his arms bouncing back and forth so fast like they truly were bullets. Garp now flinched in a twinge of pain as over a dozen blows slammed into him all at once. Okay, time to start blocking. He told himself, bending his knees so he could swerve and deflect as many punches as possible. But soon Luffy's blows started aiming for where he would be, not where he was. The punches got through his guard and he was actually starting to feel sore. That's it. Use your observation, predict where he's vulnerable. Luffy's speed seemed to double as she poured more energy into the attack, Garp actually starting to sweat the tiniest bit. Damn, I might have trained him too well, he sighed, it's just like Dragon all over again. Need to be stronger. Then use armament, you numbnuts. What, did you plan on saving that at the last minute? We're on a time limit here. Luffy complied, his fists shifting to black, and now Garp was actually starting to feel real pain. One punch would have felt like a rock between the eyes. Several hundred beating down on him all at once. He was starting to regret teaching him that technique. At least he hasn't used finger gun yet. You're almost there, Luffy. Nika shouted, you need to push your willpower to its limit. Tap into your conqueror's haki. How but I have never used it yet. The night Garp first told him about haki, Nika let him in on the secret third variety, only an extremely select few had. But no matter how hard Luffy trained, it never came up. Stop talking to yourself, brat. Garp ordered, right before one of his knees started to buckle. Luffy, listen to me. This is your dream on the line. Imu is still out there, pulling the world by the strings. Remember our mission, Luffy. Remember your promise to Shanks. Remember your brother. That did it. Something, like a burning fire in his gut, was stoked into a roaring inferno. Luffy screamed to the heavens as a wave of force was unleashed. The ground trembled, the morning breeze was shattered, and Garp actually gaped in terror when he felt it. And no, it can't be. Just like the Fleet Admiral or no. That damned face entered his mind. Wild black hair, a long red coat, and a smile that made his blood pressure spike. Come on, Garp. You'll never catch me like that. Now, Luffy. Take this. Luffy took the last of his strength and poured it on, the armor hardening to its maximum, before his left hand crashed into Garp's face, while the right collided with his gut. The proud Vice Admiral felt he would go black for a moment and almost lost his breakfast before he tumbled backwards. Like father, like son he had, so damn close. Luffy collapsed on the ground, dripping sweat and his arms burning like they were shoved in a fireplace. Every breath felt like an accomplishment at this point, but soon he saw it. His grandfather, the illustrious Monkey D. Garp, hero of the Marines, with his butt on the grass and his feet clearly off the spots he marked. He began to laugh, little by little. He was burned and he might have coughed up blood, but he didn't care. He did it. He won. He would never be a Marine. He'd be a pirate. The king of the pirates. Garp just left him to his laughing fit, passing by a smirking face along the way back to the docks in Fuchsia village. Button up your shirts, you look like a damn hippie. No. Garp just grumbled about the kids these days, while the 16-year-old went to fetch his brother. He just earned himself a big old helping of meat for sticking it to the old man. And though Garp wanted to turn back and drag Luffy by the scruff of his neck, he stayed on course and walked up the gangplank to his battleship. Set sail now, he told the nearest seaman, we're leaving for headquarters. Sir? What? Well, is your grandson not coming with us? Forget about him. That's an order. The young private wisely went about relaying Garp's commands. While everyone was busy, he pulled out Luffy's signed application form to the Naval Academy. It was a good idea to not turn this in, after all. He then accidentally let the papers catch on the sea breeze and float down into the water, rendering them useless. Garp then headed to his cabin for a nice, long drink. He'd toast to whatever marine made the mistake of trying to apprehend Nika Luffy. The forests of Mount Corvo was infamous for their danger. Predators like tigers the size of boats to massive falcons stalked the greenery. Only the mountain bandits like the Deity family dared call this place home for a reason. But there was one exception, a 17-year-old lad who was strolling through the trees without a care in the world. He was actually looking for some tigers, both because he needed lunch and because it was part of his daily regimen. Monkey D. Luffy was no longer the little boy who begged Shanks to join his crew. Now he was a determined young man looking to get as strong as possible before he set out on his own journey. Standing around 6'5", Luffy now had to look down at most of the islanders. His red vest showed off his muscular arms, made from hours of lifting boulders the size of houses. His blue jeans stopped at his knees and left his swollen calves exposed, better for his usual dozen laps around the coast every morning. The only things unchanged were the sandals on his feet, his messy black hair, the straw hat on his head and his beaming smile. "There you are." Luffy cheered as he came across a dozen tigers picking at the corpse of some animal. The giant cats seemed troubled for a moment before growling at each other, urging the pack to gang up on him. When will these overgrown house cats get the lesson?" commented Nika, amused as always. "Hey, I'm not complaining," Luffy said back, rolling his shoulders as the predators circled around him. No matter how many of these guys he beat up and brought back to the Fuchsia village butcher, they always tried to attack him. But at least he meant he was never out of opportunities to get stronger. One of the tigers leapt at him from the back. Luffy didn't even look as he leapt to the side, his observation haki seeing it coming long before it happened. Another tried to claw him, but he easily caught the limb and sent the beast flying with a kick. Two more tried to gang up on him, leaping so they could carve his stomach open. Luffy just stood there with a grin. Iron body. With practiced ease, his expansive muscles tightened until they were as hard as steel. The attacks bounced off of him, the tigers rolling into a heap and looking at him in confusion. They didn't get much of a chance before Luffy leapt into the air and grabbed onto the tree branches with his rubbery arms. As he treated the timbers like a jungle gym, his elastic legs swung out and bowled the cats over again and again, while he didn't receive a scratch. The cats were beginning to get nervous and inched back. "Aw, come on. You're not done yet." Luffy then swung one of his legs forward fast enough to be a blur. Tempest kick. The blade of air shot out and smashed into the rest of the pack, sending them tumbling on top of each other. Once they managed to untangle themselves, the animals all snarled in anger and rushed as one to rip Luffy to shreds. The soon-to-be pirate smiled even more, planting his feet on the ground before winding both his arms back. Gum, bazooka. The arm shot forward, nailing 3 of the predators. 2 of them fell limply to the ground with broken ribs and a snapped neck, respectively, while a third was sent flying into multiple trees and thudded to the grassy floor, its spine a mangled mess. Shave. Luffy sped over to the fallen cats and gave each of them a finger gun straight between the eyes to end any suffering. With 3 of their pack dead, that made the 9 survivors incensed. They roared in bloodlust and all rushed at Luffy for payback. Paper arts. In a complete opposite to his first trick, Luffy relaxed his muscles as much as possible. Now he could bend and weave around the bites, scratches, and lunges with ease. All the better to pair with his observation haki to keep track of so many foes at once and frustrate the animals more. Finally, the pack had run out of steam and were panting for mercy. Luffy then proceeded to shave over to the nearest tree, rip the 40-foot-tall timber out of the ground with a single yank and brandish it like a massive club. "Who's next?" he dared, the same smile on his face. The tigers finally got the hint and fled into the woods away from the dominant hunter. Luffy casually set the tree down and went to gather up his lunch. It was a 30-mile walk back to the village. To many people, hauling a trio of dead animals each weighing over half a ton through the same monster-infested forest was a grueling hike. For Luffy, it was just a cool down to another day of prep. Nika pretended to weep like an emotional parent. "Look at you, so overpowered you grow up so fast. I can't wait to see how many heads will roll." Luffy just grinned. "Thanks, Nika." Makino observed the small crowd in her bar, the men and women enjoying an early afternoon lunch from a long day of work. The barmaid kept eyeing the clock, though. It was almost 1:30. Time for her favorite customer of all to show up. Sure enough, the door opened to reveal Luffy waving hello with several dozen pounds of meat in his hands from his latest haul. The villagers all cheered at his arrival. Not only had the bandit gangs avoided the town like the plague for years, but the meat and fur he brought on were a major boon to the economy. Rumors were flying that even those in the Goa Kingdom were willing to pay big bucks for some of the coats and stoles coming from the little town. "Hey there, Makino," he said, dropping the wrapped up cuts on the bar, the usual, "please." "Coming up." She headed to the grill to prepare all of it, medium well and lightly seasoned like Luffy enjoyed it. And of course he would promise to pay it all back with his treasure tab he'd been keeping for years now, no matter how many times Makino insisted. He did most of the work, bringing his own cuts instead of eating into her inventory, but Luffy was stubborn in many ways. Once Luffy has scarfed down his few dozen servings of grilled wildcat, the bar is almost completely empty and figures it's been a while since he's helped out. When Ace left 3 years ago, it left a lot of time to fill. Afternoons usually meant more training until he dragged himself back to the Dayton bandits' hideout. But today, he couldn't help but feel compelled to stay. Nika just chuckled. His avatar was currently starring as Makino reached under the back bar for a bottle, eyes locked on her plump behind stretching out her plaid skirt. "Like what you see?" Luffy scoffed, eyes darting back to his plate before Makino could spot him. "Be quiet, Nika." Luffy, did you say something?" "No, I'm good." "Oh, I doubt that I'm a hormonal little badass. That wasn't the first time you tried counting the squares on her dress." Luffy then excused himself to the bathroom. Once there, he closed his eyes and concentrated in order to visit Nika's realm. It wasn't often he had to consult the chaos god anymore, but it was still useful when he didn't want to look completely nuts talking to himself. He found Nika in his usual white void, playing with a paddleball. The god just stared at Luffy for a while, smiling as he smacked the ball back and forth so fast it was a pink blur. "Go on, ask your question. I'm going for a personal record." "What's the record?" The paddleball then burst into flames and poofed into ash. Nika just shrugged. "So close. Almost 12 minutes without spontaneous combustion. Now, what's the problem?" "I'm supposed to be king of the pirates. I shouldn't waste my time going after girls, so why do you keep egging me on?" "Wahahahaha. Oh, Luffy, you simpleton, it's natural that you should be attracted to pretty women. Even Garp had the sense to teach you that." "Well, yeah, but I can't be with Makino. I don't want to leave her waiting for me." "Who says you have to? Why not bring her with you?" "I can't do that. She can't fight. And I won't have her staying on the ship just to be my mate or something." "Aw, you're the chivalrous kind of pervert. That consideration alone makes you better than most of the D-bags in your career." "But Luffy, here's a question. What if Makino were stronger? Would you take her then?" His silence spoke volumes. "Well then let me tell you about a really neat trick you can do." Luffy soon exited the stall and returned to the bar, Makino smiling at him. The pirate then offered to pay off his tab by helping out for the rest of the day, Makino happily accepting as today had been a tiring one. It was far from the first time he had volunteered here, running food and drink while Makino prepared everything. After a plethora of hungry mouths to feed and throats to water, the sun was starting to set outside. Luffy checked the clock, 7:30 p.m. He couldn't believe 6 hours could fly so fast, but Makino clapped him on the shoulder. "Thank you so much for all your help, Luffy. Without you, that party of 10 might have wiped me out." No problem. Do you want some help closing too?" "Oh, I couldn't, you probably have things to do." Luffy just shrugged, flipped the sign and began stacking the stools on top of the tables as he was taught years ago. That was a lame excuse, and Luffy knew it. And despite being ignored, Makino didn't seem upset as she went about wiping down the counter and putting away the stock for the night. He could feel his heartbeat as he watched her, her body hunched over to reach the far edge of the bar. The peak of her cleavage as her blouse dipped lower, her cheery attitude that made him unable to focus on much else. She somehow looked exactly the same as the day he first wandered in here as a boy. Makino's eyes look away from the polished bar top and meet him. She perks up an eyebrow, a far cry from her usual patient smile. Luffy gapes inside. She isn't upset. "Haha. I told you. She wants you so bad it hurts. Now try and reciprocate." Luffy shakes his head in confusion. Nika has the unfortunate habit of forgetting that his host is still a bit wordily challenged. "Boy, act interested in her." "Oh." After a bit more cleaning up, Luffy passes another glance at her. Once again, their gazes meet. But this time he doesn't shy away. His eyes roam down to her backside as she's wiping down a stool. Instead of getting offended or shooting him off, she gives a slight shake and he watches her luscious jiggle underneath the fabric. His smile turns mischievous along with hers. "That's it. Keep at it. Maybe show yourself off a little bit and see if she likes it." Their cleanup continued. Fuchsia Village thankfully turned into a ghost town at night so nobody would interrupt. Luffy grabbed all of the glasses and plates off the tables he hadn't touched yet, walking past Makino as she followed him. He caught her eyes following his behind as he moved, so Luffy went bolder. Once he was behind the bar and in front of the sink, he slowly undid the buttons of his vest. "Luffy?" "Yeah?" He had to hide a smirk. She snapped to attention as soon as the first button came off. "Do you want me to wash the dishes? It's really no trouble." "No worries, Makino. You work hard enough." She tries to carry on with her job, but she keeps one eye peeled to Luffy's hunched back as he dunks each plate and steins in the sudsy water. All of it draws attention to the rigid sculpture of his muscles, the ones he spent so long cultivating through his training. Her face grows flushed as she takes in his body, catching glimpses of his chiseled arms whenever he reaches for the towel on his broad shoulder. Odd, how is he the same little kid? She asked herself for the umpteenth time. I wouldn't recognize him without the hat and that smile that makes my day, and hot damn that body. She can't take it anymore. She needs to do something to relieve the heat racing through her. A quick glance down, and she can see the beads of sweat running down her neck into her shirt. Well, if he can do it. Makino reaches down and starts to open up her top, undoing one button at a time. Luffy's hands shuffle around in the sink while his real focus is on her, watching her blouse slowly come off to reveal the white undershirt that does a much worse job hiding her bountifulness. Are you hot, Makino? You want me to open up a window? Ah. And no, Luffy, it's just hot is all. You know, it was just really humid today. Luffy just turns around, pretending he didn't just see her jiggle as she jumps in shock. As he actually wipes down some glasses, he notices Makino still placed her shirt on an upturned bar stool. Oh god, what's happening to me? She yells at herself, I'm not stupid teenager anymore. I started flirting with him. Why am I the one getting all nervous? I'm almost 30. Heck, is it even right for me to be with him? He's a decade younger than me. She watched as he turned to set some glasses on the drying rack, showing off his hardened abs and rigid pecs. She gulps, her face burning red. Except I don't want to be with him, like his wife. Of course not. He's got places to go, being king of the pirates, he'll probably find some other girl and… Hey Makino? Her head darts up. Yes. Are you okay? You've been wiping that one spot for 5 minutes now. She wrestles with her own conscience, fighting whether to answer her feelings or let him go. He was a free spirit, he didn't need some maiden wanting to hold on to him, but she couldn't deny how the world seemed a little bit brighter with him around. Before she can do anything else, Luffy stands directly in front of her. His eyes look down in concern and she can't help but smile. Luffy, I'm sorry with the teasing and the shirt, I know you probably don't think of me that way, but I… She reaches up, still marveling at how the little boy who barely reached her was now the dashing man in front of her, and smiles with a touch of melancholy. I'll miss you when you leave. And I don't know when, so I guess I wanted to make your last nights here special. Now it's Luffy's turn to blush, ignoring Nika chanting about how he got yet another prediction right, although how he got so good at romance was something he refused to discuss, while Makino reaches for her blouse. I'm sure that you'll meet some brave lady pirate or princess who'll just love it when you sweep her off her feet, but I guess it can't be. Luffy suddenly wraps his arms around her shoulders, Makino marveling at the warmth radiating from his grasp, and his eyes make her head spin. Makino, I'll never forget you. And the truth is I've wanted you for a long time now. The people of Fuchsia village were quite surprised when Makino's bar was still closed at 10 in the morning. It wasn't like her to be late for anything. They all just assumed she was sick or was held up getting a new shipment of beer kegs. Mayor Whoop Slap made a note to stop by in a few hours to check on her. In reality, Makino was having the best sleep she could remember. Her body snuggled into the embrace of Luffy, a blanket over the top of them both. His arms cradled her waist and felt like the world's most natural heater. She never wanted to leave. She cracked open her eyes and saw his peaceful smiling face. His eyes opened to meet hers. Good morning, Makino. Morning, handsome. Their lips met in a sweet heedless of the morning breath they might have had. Then her eyes saw the clock hanging on the wall, and all her good cheer vanished. The bar was supposed to be open almost half an hour ago. Oh crap. She rushed to find her clothes, Luffy calmly following her outside once he was redressed and helping put down the chairs, while his new lover rushed back to her house for a different shirt. He finished getting the tables ready himself, and when Makino came back, now wearing a yellow blouse with black sleeves, she could simply flip the front sign to open and take her place behind the bar. Thanks for the help, Luffy. Hey, it felt right. I'm the one who kept you. Several thirsty customers came in immediately, Luffy promising he'd be back tonight for her. He calmly walked outside before dashing out of the village and back to Mount Corvo as fast as possible. He still needed to get his training in for today after all. And first would be breakfast. Once he was approaching the forest, he noticed one of the many massive condors that often grabbed unsuspecting travelers. Well, that'll work. He jumped into the air, quickly getting the bird's attention. The brown feathered beast caught and dived for him only for Luffy to smirk. Moonwalk. He kicked off the air itself, now over 100 feet. The bird gawked in surprise before an elastic kick broke its neck and its world went dark. Luffy landed nearby, the dozen-story fall not even were him. Now he'd carry this back to the Dayton bandits' hideout for them to grill it up and to fill in a likely upset Curly over where he was last night. Makino's day was shockingly normal, at least to her. People came, ate, drank and caught up with each other and her. A few asked if she was unwell this morning, and she simply nodded, many wishing her well and reiterating how much they appreciate her. It all felt so surreal to her. Luffy didn't show up for lunch today, though she figured it made sense. He had a training schedule to keep up. She went through the motions until closing time when Luffy finally reappeared. He smiled that wonderful carefree smile as she ran into his arms. But when they separated, he warned that he had something serious to ask her. "If you could come with me, would you?" Makino's brows scrunched up. "You mean to meet your family?" He chuckled but shook his head. "No, I mean on my journey. To be king of the pirates. Would you join me?" "What?" "Luffy, I can't be a pirate. I can't fight. But what if you could?" That smile of his suddenly seemed like a tease, making her pout. "This isn't funny, Luffy. I run a bar, how would that help you? Unless you want me to be your personal." A firm hand caressed hers. "Makino, I'd never ask you to do that. I wouldn't do that to anyone on my crew. But I am serious. If you could join my crew, would you?" She could all but see her mind at war with itself. She wasn't a pirate. That'd be absurd. But to be by his side making sure he'd be safe as he traveled through the Grand Line plus, finally getting to see things beyond her little village. "Yes. I would." A smile crossed his face that made her follow. "Okay, then I've got a lot to tell you. Whatever you do, you can't repeat this to anyone that isn't on our crew, okay?" Makino nodded, trusting him implicitly. And she soon understood the secrecy as Luffy explained his role as the avatar of Nika. How the gum fruit was just a front. How he was out not just to be king of the pirates, but to essentially topple the world government. Her head was spinning, it all sounded so crazy. But then came another question, even more insane than the last. "What if I could give you a devil fruit power?" Her eyes widened. Now that was impossible. Devil fruits grew wherever they wanted. Luffy only got his thanks to Shanks' crew, bringing one back from the Grand Line. In the East Blue, they were all but unheard of. But seeing how unbelievable everything else sounded, and that Luffy was the worst liar in existence, she nodded. Luffy smiled even wider before explaining one of the many conversations he and this Nika had. The 10-year-old Luffy curled into his sleeping bag in the Dayton family hideout, his entire body sore after another long day of training with Garp. He was set to leave tomorrow, but the little boy knew that didn't mean he could rest. He needed to push himself harder, get as strong as possible, so he could make those world noble bastards pay for taking Sabo away from him and Ace. He needed to learn this hockey thing. "Kid, as much as I love a classic crusade, you shouldn't get too carried away." The young boy was suddenly in Nika's little realm, the cloud-haired jockster lounging on a black recliner. "Remember that you're still gonna find One Piece. That means you'll tango with plenty of pirates and see a whole bunch of islands. And you know what they say. It's the journey that matters, not the destination." Luffy did smile at that. His hat was back on his head and he rubbed it fondly, remembering his promise to Shanks. Ever since he found Nika's devil fruit, he felt that same fire burning. It sure was lucky he found it. "Oh, you'd think that, wouldn't you?" Nika giggled. "Well, what if I told you that was no accident?" "Huh? What do you mean?" "You see, devil fruits are a specialty of mine. After all, I created them." "You did how?" Nika simply reached into the folds of his billowing robes and pulled off a chunk of the cloudy white fabric. Luffy then watched the god stick the puff in his mouth before spitting out a tiny, bright purple candy that quickly expanded into a violet pomegranate covered in swirls. "And now, off you go." He chucked a fresh devil fruit into the air where it briefly glowed white before disappearing into nothing. Like the little kid he was, Luffy clapped in amazement at seeing real magic. "That was awesome. So what does that fruit do?" "I have no idea." "Huh? But you made it. Isn't it yours?" "Wahahahaha. Of course not. That fruit is off to find a person to tear things up. It could go to a bloodthirsty pirate, a noble marine, or a random alley cat that just wants a snack. The real trick to devil fruits is they have no set properties until someone eats them." Luffy now looked confused. He swore one of Shanks' crew mentioned they had a huge book full of devil fruits, but the god sat up with his hands on his chin. "You see, those fruits are my way of sticking it to Imu. They allow me to leak a little bit of chaos, the freedom he's trying so damned hard to erase, into his orderly world. What they do is they tap into the dreams, personalities, ambitions, the things that make people unique and graft an ability to match. Where'd the fun be if I dictated how people use them? That makes me no better than him. But Marines use them too." "Oh, I'm more than aware of that. Those 3 admirals the nobles use as their lapdogs would most definitely use a kick between the legs, but that's life. The waves roll, the sun shines, and you end up making a psychopathic human superweapon or 3. Hang on if you can do that with devil fruits. Then as my avatar, so can you." "No way. Makino cried, back in the present, you could do that. She could barely believe it, but since when did Luffy lie? And, she wouldn't deny, the thought of having a power would greatly ease her fears of life on the high seas. Okay then I'll do it. Luffy's smile could have lit up the entire island. Alright. Now, hold still. His other hand moves to her forehead. Makino watches as Luffy's eyes close, his body slumping like he's falling asleep. She wonders about him only for his head to snap up, his eyes glowing gold, and she can feel a jolt of energy snap through her. A second later, Luffy is back to normal and stands from the bed as Makino does the same. She holds out her hand and releases her new power. A deafening bang shakes the room. A blast of energy rockets out of her arm, Luffy following her hand and seeing dozens of tiny pellets now embedded in the opposite wall. It also sent her crashing to the floor with her hand smoking like it was an actual gun. The burst fruit, she said aloud. She didn't know where the name came from, but it just appeared in her mind. Wow, Makino. You get to be my first crewmate. She looked down at her hand, amazed that there was no bleeding or damage to her bones. She did feel immensely shaken, like she tried firing an actual shotgun with one arm, but it was true. She was no ordinary woman anymore. She was going to be a pirate. Makino lifted herself from the ground, a new energy buzzing through her. Luffy, I thank you. I promise I'll help you all the way to One Piece. Luffy then rushed over and smothered her in a hug, amazed that his crew already had a member. He figured he would leave Dawn Island alone, but now he had someone to share the journey with. Said someone then ran her hands over his behind and let out a naughty chuckle. So, Captain, how about we celebrate? His own mind turned vulgar as he captured Makino's lips before dashing outside to make sure the bar was closed so no one would walk in on them. You're really doing a great job, Makino, Luffy assured, running around the whole island is a lot for anyone. Thanks Luffy, she wheezed, riding on Luffy's back as she tried to regain feeling in her legs. Sorry if I'm too tired too. Don't worry about that. I want you at your best for that anyway. He walked as fast as he could back to the village without disturbing the newly minted pirate too much. Once she announced her intentions to leave with Luffy, the people of Fuusha mostly took it well. Sure, they would need to find a new barkeep, but that was worth it when Makino looked so happy whenever she was around Luffy. The only protest was from the mayor, who never went beyond loud griping. And now, a few days later, Makino was joining Luffy for as much training as possible before they departed for the Big Blue. First and foremost was giving Makino some basic fighting tips so she could throw a punch and block in a real fight. Since she had those down after about a day came physical conditioning. Lifting empty beer kegs, long sprints, and light spars with Luffy were all on the agenda. And as painful as the end of each day was, the results were quickly bearing fruit. In less than a week, Makino could now lift upwards of 100 pounds, increased her stamina enough to fight for several minutes, and managed to break a wooden board without flinching. Luffy proved to be the perfect teacher for her. He seemed to instinctively know when she was reaching her limit and provided the right mix of encouragement and strictness, so Makino would honestly know when she needed to try harder and when she succeeded. Plus, while she couldn't learn any of Luffy's rubbery attacks, she could still develop her own power. With a burst fruit, Makino really was a walking shotgun capable of firing a short range, but very damaging spray of shrapnel in any given direction. The issue was that she experienced some serious kickback. She once managed to dislocate her shoulder firing too much out of her hand, much to the displeasure of the village's doctor. And yet every night, Luffy was there to carry her back to her home and her goodnight with a smile. With each day she grew stronger and gained a deeper appreciation for her loving captain. Further inspiring her was a glimpse at the grueling work Luffy put himself through. Hauling over a dozen timbers slung on his back after punching them down himself. Practicing his kicks and punches on boulders until they broke apart. Utilizing each of the 6 powers dozens of times in a few minutes. The fact that these activities led to Luffy stripping off his vest was a nice bonus for her. Makino and Luffy walked back to the village side by side, grateful for the pleasant weather. They had just finished hiking through Mount Corvo, and the lady were blushing at the waves of praise from her captain. Makino, you're a natural with observation hockey. You picked it up way more than me. Oh, stop. My range is pretty small, not like yours. You can practically see everyone in the village. Yeah, after years of practice. It took me a few months to actually start using it. You found it in, what, 2 weeks? The houses and few businesses of their quaint little village came into view, only for Whoop Slap to run up to them. Oh, there you two are. Nothing happened to you? No, what's wrong, Mayor? Makino, it's your bar, those hooligans from the mountains, they. She was off running before he could finish, Luffy right behind. The fact that she just got finished with 5 hours of exhaustive training meant nothing to her. Makino sees that the front doors have been kicked in and gapes in horror. Tables were upturned, shattered glass scattered across the floor along with all the chairs. She immediately heads back to the storage room and notices several missing kegs along with a bag with all the bar's proceeds for the month. Already enraged, they noticed a paper stuck to the far wall of the room with a dagger. Makino stomps over and soon her blood boils over. "Those fuckers." She growls, immediately storming outside. Luffy wisely stands out of her way, having sensed just how pissed she was. One of the first and best pieces of advice he received from Nika. "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Luffy jogged after Makino as she headed back out of Fuchsia and towards Mount Corvo. He kept a decent clip behind her to keep her in sight without losing her. She was so incensed that she barely paid an attacking tiger any mind, just casually kicking in the face. The cat looked more offended at being ignored and slumped off. In no time at all, she arrived in front of the Bear Club hideout just as the letter goaded her. And since turnabout's fair play, she raised a leg to smash the door, in much to the surprise of the several dozen bandits who were busy drinking and partying. Makino noticed the large burlap sack sitting on the central table of the room with a smirking stain of a man in front of it. Everything from his unwashed jacket and untucked shirt to his greasy black hair hanging down to his ears along with a beard around his mouth made it clear he was dirty and didn't care. And the smile on his face screamed of arrogance. It was only thanks to the cutlass attached to his hip nobody punched it off. Well. Don't start that with me, Makino said, "You wanted me here. I'm here, so be good little boys and give me my money back." The rest of the bandits laughed at her bravado, all save the leader who keeps the same vulpine grin. "Goodness, little lady, where are your manners? It's not every day you address a man of my stature." "Oh cut the crap, Haguma. Just tell me what you want so we can get this over with." Seeing how she refused to be intimidated, the lead vagrant stood with one hand constantly resting on the handle of his blade. "You seem to be getting awful close to that kid in the straw hat. The one who's getting way too big for his britches." Makino raised an eyebrow. "Last I checked, that kid could kick all your asses in 5 seconds flat." Haguma snarled at that. He was clearly still sore about the time Luffy tossed them all out of Makino's place when he was only 10. And the time he caught them trying to rob the village's food suppliers when he was 12. Or the dozen other times he sent them packing. That loser keeps going on and on about his dream. King of the pirates this and One Piece that, like all that shit actually exists. You know what I see? A stupid kid who refuses to grow up. Just like that even bigger loser Shanks. Stupid little retard got on his boat the second a real fighter showed up. Now Makino had to bite her tongue from laughing. Last she checked, Shanks was an emperor of the sea wanted for billions of dollars. Real strength is knowing when to use it, not lording it over people because you can. Haguma pointed a foul-smelling finger in her face. That right there is the problem with that dumbus. Prattling all this crap and then acting like he owns the place because he got lucky. It makes me want to gut him like a fish. He then rested his other hand on the bag of stolen, his smile somehow becoming even more full of itself. "So, we decided to teach him a little lesson. That loser has nothing of value, so we went after his girl. And now you're gonna have to do whatever I say in order to get this back." He then strode forward and placed his hand on Makino's shoulder, making his intentions very clear. "I'll tell you what. You, me, a little alone time with some wine. It'll be over really quick. What do you say?" The slap across his face was enough, but Makino wasn't done, shoving him backwards to the floor. "I say you're a pathetic excuse of a man who knows Luffy could wipe you all out, but you're too weak to actually do anything, so you pick on someone else instead." She then walked forward, even as several swords and pistols were trained on her. "So, here's what I offer. I leave with my money and you all can't keep playing bandits or else." The crooks looked from one to another before going into a laughing fit. One rotund gun strolled up, waving his pistol in the air. Now, come on, little girl. I doubt that." Makino suddenly lifted her right hand directly at him, gripping her arm at the elbow. "HK hand." The wave of force blasted out of her hand, and the bandit was sent tumbling down before screaming in pain. Dozens of small pellets were lodged in his, sending a wave of panic throughout the Bear Club. "What the fuck? How'd she do that? There's no way she can draw that fast. No fucking way, does she have a devil fruit? I told you this was a horrible idea, boss. Don't just stand there, you idiots. Get her." 3 guys rushed at her from behind, but Makino's observation saw them coming. She wheeled around with a high kick that knocked the leftmost grunt against his buddies before sending a flurry of palm strikes that floored them all. She then swerved to the right to avoid a sword stabbing at her gut. Without even looking. The bandit shouted before Makino pointed 2 fingers at his arm. "Aren't your digits?" Another smaller but much more concentrated blast shot the man's arm. He screamed in agony, dropping his blade as blood started gushing out of his pockmarked limb. "Shoot her from a distance." Haguma ordered half a dozen men all cocking the firing hammers on their guns at once. Makino raised her hands, ready to try and defend herself. Gum pistol. An elastic fist tore through the hideout wall like paper, slamming into the firing squad and conking them all senseless. Makino smiled brighter than the sun as Luffy peered inside, flashing her a thumbs up. See, Makino? You're awesome. You handle these guys. I'll go after their boss. Aye, Captain. Makino even flashed a salute with a giggle before several of the bandits came at her. Luffy turned as the sound of her shouting as many pain groans and thuds from hitting the wooden floor sounded, making him smile. He walked outside and expanded his observation haki to find where the boss had run off to. Sure enough, the cowardly Higuma was running through the trees away from the village with the money slung over his shoulder. He glanced behind him every few seconds, eyes popping in panic at how wrong this all was. He was Higuma the bear. The most feared bandit for miles. And here he was running away from some woman who was treating his entire crew like punching bags. He had to get away, he had to flee somewhere and use the money to start over. He had to find a way to start again when his face was on wanted posters all over the East Blue. He stopped dead in his tracks as a hand clamped down on his shoulders, then rapidly flung him backwards. Higuma looked back in terror to see Luffy reeling him in. Wait. Hold on. I'll give back the mon. Luffy's other fist smashed into his back, stopping the bandit's plea instantly. He crumpled to the ground while Luffy's sandal-clad foot rested on the back of Higuma's knee. I heard everything you said. About how you want to kill me. How pathetic I am. How you mocked my dream. And I could have forgiven all of it. Higuma hoped he could somehow get out of this only for Luffy's other foot to rest on his already injured back. But no, you went after Makino. Just to get to me. And if there's one thing I can't stand. The foot resting on the bandit's leg turned black before stomping down, shattering the bones in an instant. Higuma screamed in agony from the broken limb while Luffy glared daggers at him. It's someone hurting my crew. And now you're gonna pay for it. And now, once the beer is poured, what do we do now? Makino asked, placing a fresh pint on the bar. The four men sitting in front of her, looking much cleaner and less shabbily dressed than they were a few days ago, seemed lost until one raised his hand. Ooh. Let it rest so the head can form properly. Correct. You've answered every question right, Garth. You're officially the new manager of Party's Bar. The turban-clad man hollered in cheer, even more so when Makino pushed a beer towards him as a reward. The other three patted their friend on the back as they got up and headed to their new home at the edge of Fuchsia village. As they passed by the entrance, they passed a smiling Luffy and a nervous Mare. Luffy? Are you sure these men are truly reformed? Without you around, what will keep them in line? Don't worry, Mare. Makino thought of that too. The mayor headed outside and gawked as none other than Curly Dayton herself and the entire bandit family walked into town wearing matching red sashes along their heads. You all can't sleep easy from now on, Mayor. The Fuchsia village security squad is ready. Several of the grunts then raised their cutlasses and muskets in the air, rallying a cry that made many of the villagers scream in panic. I'm afraid we don't have any money. They've been paid in advance. 9 million ought to be more than enough to satisfy them until you all can work out something more formal. Makino walked next to Luffy, a pair of duffel bags slung over her shoulders. Her lover chuckled, he shoved everything he owned into an old beer keg. They both shook hands with the mayor, assuring that with Higuma locked up with the Marines and seeing how Luffy turned the serial killer into mincemeat, they were more than happy to toe the line. It also taught them all a valuable lesson. Don't brag about your bounty to an unknown pirate who can still cash it in. The whole of Fuchsia village then watched as Luffy pushed their little rowboat off of the town port before hopping in himself. The townspeople waved them goodbye, even Dayton. Are you crying? Someone asked her. Of course not. She lied, that stupid brat was nothing but trouble, almost as bad as his brother. Love you too. Luffy shouted as they floated away, getting a laugh out of everyone. The merriment faded as Makino rested her head on Luffy's, content to bob along the waves until something broke through the water in front of them. A massive brown sea serpent with blood-red eyes the locals had been calling the Lord of the Coast. While Makino flinched back in fear, Luffy only casually looked up at the small sea king with disinterest. Oh yeah, totally forgot about you. The colossal eel snarled and opened its jaws to reveal rows of razor-sharp cinder block-sized teeth. Luffy simply looked up, his piercing gaze making the beast recoil. A wave of Conqueror's haki rang out as Luffy commanded, "Go away." The Lord of the Coast whimpered and swam away immediately, more than likely away from Dawn Island itself. Makino gawked at the one power Luffy had never shown her before. He just looked sheepish. Sorry, but I can't really teach you that. It's complicated. His lover rolled her eyes and placed on his cheek. Whatever, big shot. Just make sure your muscles never get bigger than your heart. Why would I ever do that? Their good times soon ended when they noticed that their boat had stopped, then quickly started going backwards. Is that a whirlpool? Makino shrieked as their little boat was indeed getting pulled in by a cyclone of water. Huh, and it was such a nice day. Luffy shrugged before prying the lid off of one of the ration barrels they stocked and jumping in. Makino emptied the only other one, stuffed her bags in and then herself. She was beyond grateful she bought the quality casks that were airtight and hoped that they still were. Makino popped the top of her barrel, gasping for fresh air and relieved just to be alive. She looked around and saw they were clearly in a ship's galley, although it looked deserted. The wooden floors were still clean, and ingredients still littered the various tables, and then she heard several explosions and shouts coming from outside the door leading to the rest of the boat. Well, I knew we were going to run into other pirates, but on our first day. She then spotted the other barrel still firmly shut. Luffy, are you okay? A loud snore answered her. She giggled. Only Luffy could sleep through getting into a whirlpool. Makino lifted herself out of her impromptu boat and knocked on the side of Luffy's barrel. Rise and shine, Captain. We're still alive. Another snore. Makino sighed before another idea came. Luffy, if you don't hurry then Ace will take all the roast beef I'm making. The top of the barrel launched across the room as Luffy frantically looked around and pouted at Makino when it was clear there wasn't any meat. The two would have discussed more only to watch a young teen dart inside the kitchen and look behind him, muttering, okay, they shouldn't be able to find me in here. Hello. The boy shrieked in surprise, turning around to reveal his eyes almost popping out around his thick-rimmed purple glasses. Who the heck are you two? I'm Monkey D. Luffy, and this is Makino. What's got you so freaked out? The answer came as three burly men in bandanas with cutlasses on their entered. Hey Kobe. Are you slacking off again? The young boy insisted he wasn't, that he was looking for supplies to bring back to the ship. Makino shared a look with her captain, her expression filled with pity. He must be a cabin boy for the pirates attacking this ship. Yeah, he seems like a real wuss. Luffy? Boy, what are you two whispering about? The biggest of the pirates demanded, sauntering over with his eyes on Makino. Hey, how'd you escape? I'd never take my eyes off a hot eye like you. Oh brother, she groaned, we just got here, and I'm taken. Oh yeah? By who? By me. The pirate was about to scoff only to turn and see a pair of pecs, then having to look up at the straw-hatted stranger's glowering face. And I was told then when a woman says no, it means no. The rejected buccaneer brought out his cutlass and brandished it in Luffy's face. You've got some nerve talking to me like that, you piece of shit. Don't you know who we are? We're members of the Alvita pirates. The who? Luffy asked, scratching his head. I learned about a lot of big crews, but Alvita isn't one of them. Now you wanna mock us, you better be ready to die. He swung his blade forward, but Luffy simply caught it with his hand and a bit of armament hockey, much to the other swashbuckler's horror. What the? Aren't your digits? The pirate then fell to the ground, clutching his bleeding shoulder, while Makino blew out the smoke on her fingers. The other two gawked in terror before Luffy rushed in and smashed them into the opposite wall. What? How? Who? Hey, is this a kitchen? Luffy glanced around excitedly, making Kobe face fault, while Makino just laughed. The young man opened the door to the pantry and started helping himself to a crate of apples, while Makino knelt down to a baffled Kobe. Trust us, we won't hurt you. Come tell us what's going on. Astonished to be shown more kindness by a total stranger than his own crew, Kobe obliged and joined the duo in the storeroom. A bit of back and forth later and Luffy was laughing while Makino's pity grew, although she was a tad baffled. How did you confuse your fishing boat for one of Alvita's rowboats? I don't know, they look the same. Kobe yelled, and thanks to one mistake, I've spent 2 years of my life as Lady Alvita's slave. The only reason I'm even alive is because I can navigate. As Luffy swallowed yet another fruit, he tilted his head. Well, why not just leave? Are you crazy? Kobe shouted, Lady Alvita is a monster. She can smack a person into the sky with her club. She threatens to pound me flat unless I do everything she says. That does sound miserable, Makino worried, to think a person could just use someone else like a tool. Yeah, I hate pirates like that, her lover griped, she sounds like a total faker. Fake. How is she fake? A real pirate doesn't need to bully someone to prove they're strong. I only fight people who give me a reason to. Kobe blinked in shock. Wait, you're a pirate too? Yep. It's just me and Makino now, but I wanna have a huge crew someday. Why? What are you after? Luffy's grin stretched from ear to ear. I'm gonna be king of the pirates. The boy's jaw almost hit the floor. He whipped over to Makino who just rested a hand on Luffy's shoulder, as supportive as ever. Are you both insane? Do you have any idea what being Pirate King means? You'd have to find One Piece. Yeah. That's where we'll be going. That's totally impossible. Every pirate in the world is after that treasure. There's no way anyone can do it. No one. No way. Not. Kobe was shut up by a fist bashing him down to the floor. He ended in pain as he slowly rose up, sobbing at Luffy. Would you hit me? Because you gave me a reason. Don't ever mock someone else's dream, Luffy warned, the mirth in his eyes gone. Kobe flinched in shock and apologized, and soon the straggler was back to chomping on apples with a grin. Makino took over, helping Kobe up. Yes, we know we have a long and dangerous journey ahead. It'll take us years, most likely. But I believe if anyone can claim that treasure, it's Luffy, and I'll be by his side to help him. Kobe couldn't believe it. They were both completely serious. He looked down at his own hands, still sore from scrubbing Alvita's ship, and wanted to shout. He felt like a total loser. Hey, don't beat yourself up, Makino told him, bringing her hand to his chin. You shouldn't give up on your dream either. Oh really? Yeah. If you truly want something, you go after it no matter what. But what if I die? Then you still chased it to the end. If I die, that's the only way it should be. Kobe couldn't believe the smile Luffy was giving him only minutes after being ticked off. It made the young man sniffle in appreciation, the first real positivity he'd seen in years. You know what? You're both right. I'm not going to give up. That's the spirit. I'm gonna get off of Alvita's ship and do what I've always wanted to do. And what's that? I'm gonna join the Marines. Kobe shouted, motivated for the first time in ages. I'm gonna catch all the worst pirates, including Alvita. The cheer died when the ceiling to the galley suddenly caved in, a massive shape tumbling right between Kobe and his new friends. The cabin boy squeaked in terror as the dust cleared and revealed a colossally obese woman, her bloated form stuffed into a bright pink shirt under a blue captain's coat. A white cowboy hat with a bright red plume adorned her long black hair, her matching white pants clearly straining. Clutched in her hand was a black iron mace, studded with spikes on the end. I'm sorry, Kobe, would you care to repeat that? She said with a slight politeness. What was that about escaping to become a marine? LL Lady Alvita. As I thought, as pathetic as always, the captain smirked, swinging around to face the other two. But you two, which one of you roughed up my men? Makino took one and I got the other two, Luffy offered, Makino glaring up at the rotund woman with her arms crossed. They were jerks. The mace-wielding maverick raised an eyebrow at the blunt honesty. Is that so? Well, I suppose then an apology is in order. Luffy followed the metal club as it was leveled between his eyes. Either get on the ground and beg for forgiveness, or I'll flatten you both where you stand. Wait. Lady Alvita, you don't. Kobe. She barked, shutting him up in a second. Who is the most beautiful woman in the seas? Why, that's you, of course. No, it's not. The air in the galley seemed to freeze as Alvita's entire crew gaped at Luffy. The captain herself was gritting her teeth hard enough to bite through stone. What did you just say? That you're not the prettiest anything. You're a real hag. Now the crew were tripping over themselves in shock. Who the hell was this guy? Insulting Alvita's beauty led many of their own comrades being pounded into paste or battered into the ocean. So, now you've attacked my crew, interrupted my raid, disrespected me, and now you insult me to my face, Alvita roared. You must have a death wish. Wait, Luffy. Stop. Kobe ran in, getting between his new friend and his tormentor. You've got it all wrong. I do? Yes. Lady Alvita Isis. The reluctant pirate felt his mouth lock up. He just said those same words a few minutes ago when they got here. Lady Alvita is the most beautiful woman on the seas. It was practically an hourly chore for him to placate her ego so she didn't kill him. And yet now. I believe if anyone can claim the One Piece, it's Luffy. If you really want something, you go after it. She is the ugliest skank who ever lived. He exploded, letting out all of the abuse and cruelty he'd been given by Alvita and her crew in one yell loud enough to be heard across the sea. Luffy burst into laughter. Makino had to hide her smile behind her hands, and all of Alvita's crew were trembling at the rage, rolling off their rotund captain. Why, you little, Alvita growled before raising her club. That's it. You're dead. Kobe, for once, didn't run away even as the mace he saw in his nightmares rushed towards him. He did scream in terror, but he remained planted, swearing that he stood for his dream and could finally hold some pride in himself. Luffy was in front of him in an instant, blocking the club with his bare hand. The taller man looked back on him with genuine respect in his eyes. With guts like that, you'll be a marine in no time. What? Alvita screamed in horror. How? No one survives an attack from my mace. Then I guess I'm no one. Luffy swung his arm back and forced Alvita away, making her and the entire crew bulk. Just who the hell was this guy? While all of the commotion was going on, the Miss Love Duck was anchored next to the cruise ship. The garish pink ship was left mostly abandoned, making a certain thief very happy. Dressed in a striped top and an orange skirt, a young red-headed woman happily loaded the contents of the ship's treasure room into a burlap sack and hauled it all over her shoulder with a grin. Another great day at work, Nami. She chuckled to herself. Just imagine that blubber ball's face when she gets back and sees that someone pirated a pirate. Yes, Nami took as much pride in her line of work as possible. Robbing those who made a living robbing others was a nice dose of karma for them and got her closer to her goal at the same time. She was almost skipping as she brought her well-earned loot to a rowboat so she could escape only to notice a gaping hole in the cruise ship's deck. She sighed, giving a brief prayer that no one on board was dead when a commotion hit her ears. A loud metallic clang, several people gasping, and then a holler of joy. "Catch me if you can," a voice announced before leaping out of the broken woodwork. Nami watched as a well-muscled man in a red vest, blue jeans and a straw hat leapt into the air before skidding across the deck. Dozens of men brandishing swords and fists chased after him, angrily baying for his blood. "Is this guy insane?" Nami balked. He had an entire pirate crew on his tail, and yet this all seemed to be a game for him. She knew she should escape, but she couldn't move. She just had to see what this nut job was doing. The cat and mouse game continued for a while, Nami spotting a young teen with pink hair poking his head out to watch. The suicidal man in red then hooked his arm on one of the masts to make a hairpin turn, except then his arm kept extending like a rubber band while his body ran forward. "What the?" she gawped, much like the rest of the pirates. The man then turned, his face a confident smile. "Got you now." The pirates shouted in alarm and bolted in the other direction, but it was too late. The superhuman tensed his arm. Gum rocket. He shot forward like a bullet, barreling down the entire crew of 40+ men in one shot. Nami's hand slacked, enough for her treasure to thud to the deck. She even pinched her arm to make sure this wasn't some insane dream. "What the fuck is this guy?" The madness continued as Alvita herself jumped out of the hole, a smug grin on her pudgy face. "Hold it right there." She then raised her club to the face of a woman with dark green hair caught in her other arm. "I suggest you stop right now or else your little girlfriend gets it." The man did pause, sharing a glance with the captive woman. Nami then blinked when she saw her looking bored. If that were her, she'd be sweating bullets. "Hey Makino. You alright?" he asked her. "Yeah, as much as I can be." "And who the hell is this woman?" "A pirate is holding you hostage, Dumbus, wake up." Nami wanted to shout, but she had to hear what these two were saying. "Just who exactly are you?" Alvita dared, "You don't strike me as bounty hunters." "Nope, we're pirates. Just set out today." Alvita laughed in surprise. "Oh, pirates, are you just the two of you?" "For now." Well, let me give you both a lesson. When you meet a pirate of my stature, there's a protocol you're supposed to follow." "Like what?" "You stay out of my way if you value your lives. You hand over any valuables and then be grateful you're still breathing." "Wow, you're ugly and a bitch," Luffy scoffed, making the whole crew freeze up again. Nami gulped at the sheer murderous look in Alvita's eyes. "Mocking me again? Don't you see I have your girlfriend hostage here? I could kill her in an instant." "No, you can't." The girl, Makino, planted her hand on Alvita's barrel of a stomach and her bored face turned into a glare. "Now put me down before you get hurt." "You heard me. How dense are you, you?" "Patterson, palm." A resounding boom rocked the deck as Makino's hand exploded back, revealing a gaping wound on Alvita's stomach. The pirate howled in agony as blood rushed out of her, dropping her captive like a rock and even her famed mace, as she desperately wrapped her coat around the wound to stem the blood flow. Nami stumbled onto the railing, her mind refusing to believe what she just saw. Some random woman just blew a hole in Alvita's stomach with just her hand. "These two can't be human," she whispered, now wondering who she should be more afraid of. She watched as Makino stood up and walked towards the man, planting on his cheek. "Sorry if I stole your thunder, Luffy." "No worries. You did great." Alvita wasn't done yet, shakily getting to her feet and grabbing her mace again. She screamed like a woman possessed as she charged ahead to smash them both. Nami wanted to close her eyes to miss the inevitable bloodbath, but she just had to keep watching. And she wasn't disappointed. This Luffy threw an uppercut and cracked the iron mace, the weapon exploding into shrapnel from the force of his attack. Alvita looked at the now useless metal handle in her grasp, then back at the smiling young man. Nami almost had to laugh. She looked ready to faint. What are you?" "I'm Monkey D. Luffy. And I'm gonna be king of the pirates." Luffy then threw his arm back, his bizarre power working again as his limb extended far past the aft decks of both boats. Gum. He whipped his arm forward, the distant fist racing forward to strike Alvita in the same spot where Makino shot her earlier. Pistol. Alvita screamed in pain and peril as she was lifted off her feet by his rubbery fist, carried along into the sky before she was hurtling far into the horizon. Only a twinkle of light showed where she was, the rest of the pirates and the pink-haired bystanders staring in amazement at what just happened. Luffy's fist snapped back into place, Makino placing an arm around his waist. "Very nice, Captain. I'd say that makes our first day a success." "I'm not sure." She seemed really weak. "Weak? Who the fuck are you?" Nami screamed, pulling at her hair as she tried not to hyperventilate. I'm Luffy, he said plainly, who are you? Do you have any idea who that was? Iron Mace Alvita. She's wanted for 5 million. She was? Didn't look like it. How do you not know that? Aren't you supposed to be a pirate, and what kind of pirate just beats up another pirate for no reason? I had a reason. Oh yeah, like what? She tried to hurt Kobe. Who's Kobe? I am the bespectacled boy finally spoke up, but Luffy, that was amazing. It was nothing. Now come on. Let's get you out of here. He turned to face the downed crew, serious in an instant. Kobe's officially leaving your crew. Any problems with that? The whole crowd assured them that there was no issue, that they were deeply sorry for ever keeping Kobe, and that they were free to leave and hopefully never come back. Kobe happily followed his new friends as they jumped in one of the cruiser's lifeboats. Nami just stood there like a dead fish, processing everything she just saw. One of the most dangerous pirates this side of the East Blue was beaten in a minute. These two had some kind of supernatural power. And they were pirates that weren't total scumbags. The rational part of her brain finally kicked in. She could absolutely use people like this. If nothing else, they could help her bring in a serious payday. She hopped into one of Galleon's lifeboats with her sack of treasure and rode after this monkey D. Luffy. She doubted a goofball like him could ever make it to the Grand Line, but what was the harm in seeing what else he could do? Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Milo F. Waters for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.